Alright, welcome back everyone. Now, where I left off, I went over a brief overview of the raid map as well as the roles. And so, when it comes to the roles, as far as this video is concerned, I'm going to use some terminology that may be different from what Kabam states, mostly because it's easier to understand, but I'll let you know when I phrase at least Kabam's terminology different from what it's posted. And so, moving forward, I'm going to go over the three different roles for this map. I wanted to break it down this way instead of the regular like champ logo, mostly because it gives you a better idea of the role of the tactician, which focuses in on raw damage as well as control over the fight when you have the cosmic side as well as the mystic side. And so the way that I'll sort of at least organize this video, I'll show you the list of the champions for each specific role. And then afterwards, I'll show you the buffs they can pick up and which one would be best for one champion versus another champion. So don't get too overwhelmed when I go to the next slide. What I want you to look at is really the second portion. I know this is a lot of text, but this first portion here where you see raid fervor, ignore this part for now. All that means is that your attack is going to increase the more you do the second portion as well as the third portion, okay? So for right now, again, ignore the first portion, focusing on the second portion, and then if there is a third layer to the node, then yeah, read it. But honestly, the most important portion is this middle layer because that's what's going to activate the node. So for example, punishing a heavy or special attack will grant in order a 45-second fury, then armor, then a precision, then a true damage. Once you reach the threshold for all of these buffs, I and my attack of my champions are going to increase, and it's going to keep going higher and higher and higher. So here's the order you want to read this in: second portion, third portion, and then the first portion. Okay, so say again: second portion, third portion, and then the first one. Okay, so you would pick the corresponding champ that benefits from the buff that you want to pick up. So let's say I go with Dr. Doom instead of, let's say, a buff heavy champion. So if that were the case, then if I am interrupting a heavy or special, hey, Doom also really benefits from unparalleled buffs as well, because it increases his incinerate as well as some of his armor when it concerns his ability to gain certain buffs. But again, your champ that you choose really depends on the team that your other alliance mates are bringing, because as a reminder, you're going in a group of three. One person is a tactician, one person will play the role of a vanguard, and the other will play the role of the assault. So again, the tactician focuses in on raw damage and power control. And next we have Vanguard. Now, you'll notice a lot of these roles have different, I guess you can say, characteristics. And so the characteristic of this role is damage mitigation, as well as they are a literal tank. For example, you see there's Silk here, but she benefits from the Inequity Mastery. Red Hulk builds the physical resistance, the same thing as Luke Cage. Even the, I guess you can say, the squishy champs that have trouble taking a hit, their tankiness can be further increased when it concerns different mastery setups. And so with that, I'm going to pick a champ for this example that is available as a 7-star that was added with the community poll, and that is going to be Colossus. And so now I know this is a lot. Before I go into my next point, I want to say that Vanguard, from me analyzing the different roles, has the biggest skill gap because your masteries have to be on point and your knowledge of the champ as well as sustainability has to be and take priority. And so we have 3 different buffs. Shield Smasher, so has to deal with placing armor breaks. Weak Spot, this is non-damaging debuffs such as weaknesses and taunts. And then Critical Armor, there's armor in the name, so Colossus will be really good here. Not only that, Ultron, Iron Man, Civil Warrior, War Machine with his prefix that you can use for your other teammates will also be very helpful when equipping the armor buff, or really the critical armor buff. So that's going to be the most important thing, synergizing your champs with the correct buff, and the correct buff should be able to synergize with your battle group. Now, I want to stop here before I go into Assault. I want to say that I know this can be overwhelming, and it is overwhelming for a lot of players. But just think of this map, or really this raid, as essentially map 9. And so, all it is, think of incursions, and think AQ had a baby, and that baby is the raid week. And so, concerning the map itself, that's all it is. Think of this as a hybrid mode between incursions as well as AQ. And so when it concerns the assault class is going to focus in on DOT damage over time, as well as focus in on prowess and special attacks. And so I'm going to use Magneto as my next example, because not only does he benefit from the prowess buff, but he also benefits from the DOT boost as well when it concerns his bleed damage. And so it's guaranteed that he's going to do a lot of damage, mostly because he benefits from either or, whether it be DOT boost or the prowess buff, and it gives him that flexibility to also assist your other battle group mates or alliance mates within your pod. Okay, so here's the most important thing. Once you grab your buff, there's a certain order you need to attack. And here's where I'm going to rephrase Kabam's terminology. All roll charges is an attack boost. But in order for you to gain that attack boost and share it with your other members in the battle group, you need to attack the minis in a certain order. So if the tactician were to attack first, then the assault class would go second, and then Vanguard would go third, in that order. Whoever and then suppose like Vanguard attacks first, then tactician would go second, and assault. It needs to follow this order. You can't just go like, oh, Vanguard's going to attack and then the assault. That means that tactician will not get that boost, and essentially you'll have to start all over when it comes to gaming those attack or roll charges as well. So this slide just makes sure that you have a proper understanding of the attack cycle. Whichever class you start with, make sure you pay attention to this class triangle to make sure that if tactician goes first, then you go in with assault next. If assault goes in first, make sure Vanguard goes in, so on and so forth. I'm going to use a lot of terminology, so just remember, roll charges are attack boosts shared amongst your pod, whether that you be in the left, the middle, or the right. Okay, so breaking away from the mini bosses now, and also our rolls. There's something called roll force. And I know this is a lot of terminology, I get it, but I'm going to do my best to help you all through the process. Each of the mini bosses, as well as the bosses, have a mission for you to complete. Okay? Once you complete this mission, this gives you more attack to be able to take down the health pool. So all roll force charges are, it allows you to take the minis down faster. That's it. Think of when you explored or went through Necropolis, they had a local node or a trap node. Think of the trap node in the same way as the mission you need to complete for these minis. As long as you're doing what the mini requires you to complete, that's all that needs to be taken care of. You don't need to worry about the rest. Literally just complete the mission, increase your attack, that's it. Call it a day. And this is literally what I say earlier, or what I stated earlier. Roll force charges are earned from completing the missions, and I'll talk about the missions later. Each of the mini bosses will have a mission for you to complete. Okay, so Raid Fervor refers to the main resource that you will use for the final boss. Okay, for the final boss. So each time you complete an in-fight objective, you gain something called Fervor. Okay, and it's another way for you to increase your attack. So again, roll force and roll charges and roll fervor, or raid fervor. I know it's a lot. All it does is increase your attack. As long as you do what the node tells you to do, you're fine. What you'll run into trouble is if you ignore the node, the defender is going to get much harder and you won't be able to do as much damage when you get to the final boss.